Welcome to Parallel Leaders. Every week, we come alongside you and focus on 8 growth points to address the obstacles holding you back. Not only do you need to grow as a leader, but your team, your systems, your numbers, your finances, the expectations, the facilities, and your culture must grow. If you target and evaluate your organization, leadership, or department under the microscope of these 8 growth points, you will optimize your effectiveness as a leader. And today's podcast is all about equipping you with the tools and conversations you need to move forward. So let's go.
Look at this, and we want to consider these strategies to help us all improve our level of self-awareness in our leadership style. Okay, so back to the notes. Number one, how to improve yourself is know yourself. So before you can improve yourself, you should know yourself. And that's part of self-awareness, is knowing yourself, knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses, knowing your tendencies, knowing your, your sore spots, I guess, or the places that you might be oblivious, your blind spots, if you're aware of that. But it's very helpful to know yourself, and it can be helpful to know your own strengths, know your own weaknesses. And so we're going to provide some discussion about this. And, we've got lots of resources that we can provide for you. We're going to give you some of those tonight, but we use the DISC, D-I-S-C personality profile. We use that one quite often. That gives you an insight into your personality. We use StrengthsFinder, which gives you insight into your strengths. And if you're not aware of StrengthsFinder and haven't taken that one, I'd highly recommend that one. With what they did to put that test together is they surveyed hundreds and hundreds of leaders, and basically listed all their strengths, studied all their strengths out, and basically summed them up in 33 different strengths. And they said you can sum up basically all human beings in 33 different strengths. And they give you this test that then spits out your top 5 strengths, which the combination of those top 5, the likelihood of you having the same top 5 as somebody else is very, very rare. It's actually surprising, but it understands what your strengths are. We use 16 personalities as another detailed personality one that's great and free, 16personalities.com, I believe. We use the Enneagram, which we're going to give you tonight. Enneagram again, and we're going to have some fun discussions around that, but that's another way of Enneagram is personality based, yes, but it's almost more your weakness based. It kind of points out your blind spots, tendencies, weaknesses, typical ways of responding. So just to warn you, when you do that one, you're probably not going to like what you find, but it's good to know, because we need to know ourselves. Another way to know yourself is simply ask yourself the question, what am I doing well? Right? What do I do well? And get as specific as you can in what you do well. And you can begin to push in deeper into that and going, what are my strengths within my strengths? Okay, so sometimes we give ourselves a broad strength. We're like, I'm really good at this. Okay, well, what you might be good at this big picture, but can you narrow it down and going, what makes me good at that specifically? Okay, so just for Pastor Rene, because I know he's going to want to talk about the Oilers at some point. But so Connor McDavid can say, I'm good at hockey. All right, okay. Pastor Rene caught that. All right, I'm just making sure but Connor McDavid good at hockey. Okay, but let's get specific. Let's get specific. What makes him really good at, his hand-eye coordination? He's really good at that. He's really, to me, when I watch Connor McDavid, I've never seen anybody quite like him that has the speed or the acceleration quite like him, and going, he takes it to another level. So the more specific you can get, I'm good with people. Okay, well, what makes you? Break it down. What is my strength within that strength? And break it down as much as you possibly can. Get as specific as you can, because then you can find your sweet spot. Okay, the ongoing process of self-reflection powers self-awareness. So do that. A quote from Samuel Johnson says this. He says, almost every man wastes part of his life in attempts to display qualities which he does not possess. Let me say that again. He says, almost every man wastes part of his life in attempts to display qualities which he does not possess. Yow. Yeah, I wish that was a quote from Samuel L. Jackson too, but it's not. It's Samuel Johnson. Almost every man wastes part of his life in attempts to display qualities that he doesn't have. So it is good to know yourself and to know specifically what your strengths are. Not what we perceive other people want our strengths to be, but what they really are. Okay, number 2 is how to improve self-awareness is to identify how other people react to you, not just act around you, but how other people react to you. Okay, so one way you can assess how your actions affect others is by observing or reflecting on how they react to you. So identify what factors cause them to respond in a certain way. Okay, this helps you understand your impact on others. So it's vital to know how others react to you and to be aware of that, right? So I'm not naturally an outgoing people person. I'm more of an introvert than an extrovert. I'm not that. But when I go and visit, Tabor, for instance, this last Sunday, I go in knowing that there's lots of people in the congregation there who haven't met me except for on the screen, right? So they feel that they know me and are excited to meet me, but I don't know them and they don't know all the rest of it. And I know that. So I go in being fully aware that how people are going to react to me is going to be different in those situations where they don't have me all the time. So I, on purpose, kind of wander around and go to people and smile and pretend like, know that I know them and kind of smile and talk with them and engage with them. And because of that reaction, I also know and am very aware that certain people, Jen, I'm going to pick on Jen today because Jen did this today, right? I called her in. We had some big things to discuss for a meeting tomorrow, and I called her in my office. And the first thing she does is walks in my office. And she's like, "Am I in trouble?" I was like, "No." I was like, "No, what? No." But I also know that when people get called to the principal's office, because I'm the reaction is, and so oftentimes I will start conversations when someone comes to the office and saying, "Hey, I want to talk," and I'll start right at the very beginning. I want to talk about this because I can see or sense that they're anticipating is something going on. Am I in trouble? What's going on? But identify how other people react to you. When you're working in an area of weakness, few people will show interest. They won't compliment you. In contrast, your strengths will capture the attention of others and draw them to you. So if others are continually praising you in a particular area, identify it, examine it, and start developing it, right? So if you're working in an area of interest, of weakness, people aren't going to pay much attention. If they start complimenting you, pulling to you, all the rest of it, they're probably hinting at a strength. Their reaction is indicating a strength that you may have. So it's not just negative reactions, but it's also positive reactions. Know how others react to you. All right. Number 3, self-aware leaders. They gather feedback from trusted contacts. Okay. So vital. That's why I underlined it, made you fill it in as trusted. Gather feedback from trusted contacts, not just gather feedback from everybody and anybody. There's lots of people out there that are critics. And that doesn't make them an expert. So, and that doesn't make them trustworthy. Just because they can tell you a movie is terrible doesn't mean they're able to make one. Okay, so there's a big difference between that. So you want to gather feedback from trusted contacts. And while it can be challenging to separate your personal bias as you assess yourself, okay, it's virtually impossible for any one of us to assess, to separate our personal bias from ourselves. Asking others to give honest input is one way to gather and to gain a broader picture of who you are and how you relate to others. So self-aware leaders may ask friends, okay, or family members or coworkers they trust to give insight about specific traits as they seek to better themselves. And again, I've said it before, I'll say it again, is that all of us have blind spots. And so if you have somebody you trust who's going to give you not just what you want to hear, but what you need to hear, and can do it in a kind way, then it's good. You want to pull on those people to give you some input, and pull on them to give you some feedback. All right. Number 4 is find ways that you can show more empathy. Okay. So find ways that you can show more empathy. And at this point, I want to make this point is that self-awareness as a trait in leadership is really EQ or emotional intelligence. We know IQ is our intelligence factor. EQ is our emotional factor, emotional intelligence. And there's people that have high IQ and a really low EQ, and they're terrible leaders. There's people that have high EQ and a low IQ. I'd rather work for those guys all day long, right? So EQ is way more important. Emotional intelligence, you have to find ways to kind of grow yourself in emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence, which is the ability to recognize emotions in yourselves and in others, also influences your self-awareness, right? So knowing how to recognize your own emotions, and again, emotions aren't good or bad. Whatever you feel is what you feel. So don't worry about that, but it's a trigger. It's going to show you something. It's going to point something out that this is something's off or something's this, like, so pay attention to that, but be able to recognize your own emotions, why those emotions are there, but also recognize emotions in others and consider the feelings of others as you communicate and make decisions. In another way to act self-aware as a leader. Okay, so considering the feelings of others, paying attention to the emotional needs of those you lead can help guide your decisions and relationships as a self-aware leader. Okay, be mindful of others' body language while you speak with them to gain insight into their emotions. I once worked with a coach in coaching football. He's a head coach, and I was like, this guy was brilliant in the X and O's. He's brilliant at his understanding of the game. He was an all-star player, all-star, like all the rest of it, but he severely lacked the ability to read the emotions of others. And when the players needed a push, he was soft. And when they needed him to be soft, he went hard. And I was like, after a while, it was very hard on the kids and everybody else, he's part of the reason why I'm back coaching now, because he got fired from his position and ended up almost tanking the program because this one trait, this is one thing he lacked, is like, man. So it's vital that we know how to show more empathy and work on our EQ. All right, number 5 is practice self-evaluation. Okay, those who are self-aware continually process and reflect on their situations. They practice this before, during, and after a conversation. They use your emotional intelligence and empathy to assess how you impact others through your personal characteristics. Okay, look for patterns. Notice when you receive a positive response from your communication and actions as you interact with your team, and notice when you receive a negative response. Okay, why did that happen? What happened there? And then work to improve those traits and use them as much as possible. All right, so 5 things there. How to improve your self-awareness. Know yourself, okay, which we're going to get to in a little bit. If you haven't done some of these tests, do these tests. These are great. They're lots of fun. You get to talk about yourself, learn about yourself. It's great. Know yourself. Identify how other people react to you. Pay attention. Do people avoid you? Do people want to be with you? Do people how are they reacting to you? When do they react? How do they react in those situations? Gather feedback from trusted contacts. If you're sensing something, did I, I'm seeing this reaction. Did I come across too harsh? Did I do this? Ask feedback from a trusted contact. Number 4, find ways you can show more empathy, right? Raise your EQ level. And then number 5, practice self-evaluation by, again, it's just coming back to, we're going to talk about in the next session about specifically how to self-evaluate, but it's coming back to constantly reflecting and going, how did I do today? Right? And journaling it. How did I do today? How did this reaction go? How did this conversation go? Did I motivate or demotivate?
Thank you for listening to the Parallel Leaders podcast. If you're looking for additional resources, tools, and conversations to move your organization forward and capture the hearts of your community, check out parallelleaders.com And make sure to subscribe to receive each new episode as it's released. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Parallel Leaders. We'll see you next time.